Hello everyone, welcome back to Into Sports. I'm your host Evan. Today I'm going to go through my NFL power rankings, my top 10 teams. But before I start, please click that subscribe button. 94% of you are not subscribed. Do me a favor, click subscribe. But we've had the draft and free agency, so now it's time for me to rank my top 10 teams in football, starting at 10 with the LA Chargers. Their offensive line went from becoming a weakness to a strength. You add the best center in football, Corey Linsley in free agency, draft Rashawn Slater in the top 15, and Justin Herbert, their quarterback, was off the charts good last year. And this team really reminds me of the Browns 2 years ago, where the talent was in place, but the coaching, the cohesion, I don't know what exactly, it just wasn't there. But now there's a new guy calling the shots in Brandon Staley. Can he coach? Can he not? I don't know. But what I do know is that he led the best defense in football last year with the Rams. And now he inherits a defense with Joey Bosa and Derwin James. So I think the Chargers will have a Browns-like breakout this season. They're at 10. Number 9, Indianapolis Colts. Their move of the offseason was trading for Carson Wentz. And their season will be defined by his play. In 2017, he was a top 2 or 3 quarterback. In 2018, top 5 to 6 quarterback. 2019, top 8 or 9 quarterback. But last year, the wheels fell off. The play was horrible. There was turnovers all over the place by Wentz. But all of the issues I saw on film last year are fixable. And if anyone is going to fix those issues, it's the guy who was with him in 2017, Frank Reich, when he had that near MVP season, who just happens to be his new head coach in Indianapolis, Frank Reich. And Wentz will be comfortable behind one of the best offensive lines in football. He won't have to force the issue, which got him into all kinds of trouble last year. They have a great running game with the offensive line and Jonathan Taylor. Carson Wentz is set up for success this season. And so are the Colts, number 9. San Francisco 49ers at number 8. And this is a really tough team to rank because I have no clue what's going to happen at quarterback. They trade up for Trey Lance in the draft, go from 12 to 3, give up some big-time draft capital, but they still have Jimmy Garoppolo. So my guess would be this team gets off to a nice start since it's a great roster, but then they have back-to-back underwhelming offensive performances somewhere in the early to middle part of the season, and then that's when they make the switch to Trey Lance, who I think is going to be the most successful quarterback in this draft class. Because Kyle Shanahan is as good of an offensive mind as there is, and he's going to make life easy for his quarterback, whoever it is this season. Now, if it is Trey Lance, the athletic kid out of North Dakota State, I think we will see a dominant run game because just the threat of Trey Lance's legs will help open up Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, and that traditional run game. And this team was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and the main reason for that was their defense. And they were sneakily, even in a down season, the 5th best defense last season. And that was without their best defensive player, Nick Bosa, who was injured. So they'll get him back next year. They had so many injuries last year, so I'm throwing the season away. I expect more of the Super Bowl type team from San Francisco that we saw a couple of years ago. Number 7, Cleveland Browns. Last year, they took a massive leap. It was their first time being in the playoffs in, I'd like to say 15 years, maybe even longer. But their defense was really bad last season, 25th ranked according to DVOA. But they go out in free agency, they get a top 10 safety in John Johnson, a nice number 2 corner in Troy Hill, both those guys from the Rams, Jadeveon Clowney, and they go defense in the first 2 rounds of the draft. So that defense, I think, is going to get way better and also way healthier. They had some injuries last season. But offensively, Baker Mayfield looked a lot more like the number 1 pick that he was, and they have an identity on offense. They play smash mouth football with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and then they let Baker throw strikes off play action. Oh, and I didn't even mention that they get a top 10 receiver in Odell Beckham Jr. back. So they have talent all over the field in Cleveland, and if that defense improves the way I expect it to, Cleveland becomes a serious threat in the AFC. Number 6, their division rival, Baltimore Ravens. Now, Baltimore's identity is their defense, and it will always be like that. We know it's going to be a top 5, top 10 type unit, and we know offensively, the Ravens are going to steamroll the bottom feeders of the league. Week 1, they play the Raiders. They might win 48-6, because when they play the bad teams, they can easily rush for 250 yards. So between their defense and their ability to push people around at the line of scrimmage, this team could win 13 or 14 games in the regular season. But the question is, can this team win deep into the playoffs? And I'm skeptical, because to win late in January, you need a good, straight drop-back passing game. And the Ravens don't have that. To me, that blame mostly falls on the receivers and the play caller, with a little blame towards Lamar Jackson. But the Ravens signed Sammy Watkins. Now, he will give you one great game every year, but he'll be hobbling around for the other 16. They draft Rashad Bateman in round 1. To me, that's a waste of a pick. That's way too high for Rashad Bateman. So it's a suspect receiving core at best. And their offensive coordinator is kind of a read option guy, Greg Roman. He's not scheming anybody open through the air. So unless the passing game around my guy, Lamar Jackson, improves significantly, this team is a really good team, but they have a ceiling come playoff time. Moving into the top 5, Green Bay Packers. Obviously, this rank assumes Aaron Rodgers will be on the team, because if they had Jordan Love at quarterback, they'd probably go 6-11. Because this is a really average roster that just happens to have the greatest quarterback of all time, the GOAT, Aaron Rodgers. Now, I do need to give some credit to Matt LaFleur, their head coach, because when LaFleur was hired, I thought him and Rodgers wouldn't really cooperate. I thought Rodgers wouldn't respect him. But Rodgers' issue is with the front office, not the coaching staff. Rodgers and LaFleur has been a really, really good combo because LaFleur's offense is effective. I always praise Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. Well, LaFleur worked with both of them and has a very similar offense. But as much as I'm starting to like Matt LaFleur, who I once criticized, if Aaron Rodgers isn't there, I'm certainly not talking about the Packers in a top 10 teams video. Packers at 5. Number 4, Buffalo Bills. Last year was all about Josh Allen. He skyrocketed into top 5 quarterback territory, elite quarterback. And not only do they have a top 5 quarterback, they have a top 5 receiver in Stephon Diggs. My only question offensively is their run game. Last year, there was simply too much on Josh Allen's plate, as good as he is. And we saw that in the AFC Championship game. The Bills need to find a way to have some balance on offense, some ground, some air. They don't have to be great on the ground in the run game, but they need to be respectable, in my opinion, if they really want to be in the Super Bowl or hosting the Lombardi in about a year. Now, their defense is solid, not great, but their weakness defensively was their pass rush, and they did address that with their first 2 draft picks. So now that run game is the main weakness of that team and what I think is holding them back. Number 3, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now I guess this looks a little low since they are fresh off a Super Bowl victory, but it was really close between 2 and 3 on this list. Now I would question the fact that their quarterback turns 44 years of age in August. But his last name's Brady, so forget that. He was red hot down the stretch of the regular season, but Brady was good, not great in the postseason. Now they are returning every starter from last year's team. And that team really picked up momentum towards the end of the year. Because really, they were just seen as like the 8th or 9th best team in the first 10 weeks or so. But down the stretch and in the playoffs, something clicked and they took off. So unlike last year, I expect them to come out of the gate swinging because it's the same roster as last year. And really, there's no weakness on this team. Explosive receiving core, an O-line that keeps Brady on his feet, linebackers flying all over the field, a young secondary that had no issues holding up against some of the best receiving cores in football. Really, the only thing they don't have is a quarterback that's going to make plays on his own. And that's what the Kansas City Chiefs have, and that's why they're number 2 on this list. I know. They lost in the Super Bowl to the Bucs. But they lost for one reason and one reason only. Offensive line. Shaq Barrett, Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul, they were in the face of Patrick Mahomes for 3 hours on Super Bowl Sunday. So what did the Chiefs do? Trade for a Pro Bowl offensive lineman, Orlando Brown. They give Joe Thuney $80 million to play guard, and they convince Kyle Long to come out of retirement to also play on that offensive line. So now arguably the best quarterback, the best wide receiver, the best tight end have great protection and plenty of time to cook. But they're not number 1 because the Rams are going to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, they traded Jared Goff and picks to get Matt Stafford, which was the biggest acquisition of this offseason. Do we realize this team went to Seattle, who has Russell Wilson, and won a playoff game with one of the 5 worst starting quarterbacks in the league? In fact, they started John Wolford and won that game. And now they have one of the most talented throwers in the game under center with Matt Stafford. Oh, but he didn't win in Detroit. Nobody wins in Detroit. They haven't won a playoff game since 1957. So Matt Stafford is going from junk around him to the best defense in football, featuring the best defensive player in football, Aaron Donald, and the best corner in football, Jalen Ramsey, and one of the best coaches in football, Sean McVay, and a really solid receiving core, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and a run game that was dominant when they featured Cam Akers down the stretch of last year. So the Rams were already really good last season, but this offseason, at the most important position by a mile, their biggest weakness becomes a strength. So the Rams will win the Super Bowl.